Alright, whenever you're ready.
Man, you just call me Iggy?
Well, that's the first I'd ever heard it was from Iggy.
Nah, me too.
My order.
Yeah.
The entire speech act of the 1 NC was a double turn. They tell us we should give up on our understandings of things like racism in favor of a collective struggle against capitalism, which one of y'all want to tell that to Moten, who forefronts both black and black experiences inside the academy. Their Beauregard evidence turns every single thing that the 1 NC said about the need to be liberated from the academy and from capitalism, which were also two contradictory starting points, which Beauregard says are meaningless because all oppression has already been solved for and all liberation has already occurred, which means that all of this revolutionary politics is just a simulation, which makes the entire speech act of the 1 NC meaningless as it's situated itself inside the academy. They say it's so fucking evil. Also, you should reject them just for reading this evidence into this space, because you cannot tell us that we have been liberated. We have been liberated when we still have to live our lives as best as we can through a navigation of systems of capitalism, and especially the university setting. But you can't fucking tell me that all liberation has occurred when these experiences directly contradict the privilege of the negative assertion in this debate, which is why our experience is something that needs to be paid attention to. Otherwise, we will always just give up and drop out because people like Beauregard want to shit on our politics and tell us we're worthless. Oh, and fuck this essentialism. What does Beauregard know about liberation when reservations still exist? Shit, Joe, we can't even talk about the non-human because the non-humans damn sure ain't liberated. Now, you can vote affirmative to transfer the dynamics of the classroom through our model of effective education, because we have won the necessity of affirmation when the way that the classroom is oriented itself to the 1 AC was meant to bar our presence from being within them unless we subject ourselves to accommodations that contribute to our self-loathing, the loss of identities, and the betrayal of our creativity. Our individual identity and creativity must always be sacrificed for the good of a collective that will never have our back at the end of the day, which is why we refuse to subordinate ourselves to the control of multifaceted curriculum that bolster white success and the mental subordination of colonized people, degrading our position in the world through the incentives of making education that not only outlines our path to violence, but also encourages a living up to our violent portrayals in order to make it more easy to ship us off to prison cells that enter your Jerome evidence, because it says that because it indicates that we would not, that our identities do not have to trade off with the collective, but more so for this reason, debate needs to orient itself around the necessity to develop new curriculums that physically denies the ability for external forces that determine who we are for us. This is why we need to resist the prescriptive practices of the status quo in order to develop our own educational models, both inside and outside of the debate, which answers your private and public sphere argument that says that we must mutually inform each other, which is the permeable boundaries argument that we're making, that the 1 AC transforms the dynamics of this classroom. This is our rejection of predetermined curriculums were necessary, even sparking these conversations to begin with, which is why the role of the negatives provide disadvantages to our educational model while simultaneously advancing a model that not only incorporates but necessitates discussions of the conditions we talked about. This is Lowry, and yeah, I'm reading the entire card, not just my letter. And a model was working to combat the pipeline in which 1 of 5 black young men end up in prison for similar consists about who was charged with reversing the course. Everyone we're all to link first and most agreed must come from the individual district schoolhouses and classrooms. Many teachers have long employed a mindset similar to that of Joe Clark, the iconic principle portrayed by Morgan Freeman in the 1989 film Lean on Me, which other students are just bad apples who must be separated from the rest in order for learning to take place. The old school there are bad cats and we have to keep them out. Philosophy, Lewis said we have to get past that mindset, coupled with the increasing presence of police and school resources in the hallways and over amounts of suspensions that had to circle black and disabled children disproportionately being labeled as bad apples, also for offense. Such as talking back to teachers, school years comes throughout them, correcting behavior, zero tolerance, also been seen those students booted from class via suspension, funneled to the judicial system. If you can get kicked out for any kind of misbehavior, sending a message that we don't want everybody here. You can market it here now. We have disadvantages to their alternative and only a class-only focused day. Say we should start only from class because universal affects everyone. Race is also universal. Gender is universal. Their ignorance makes whiteness and masculinity inevitable. This means that they don't get a root cause. They have a race intersection of identity by rendering non-white masculine bodies as disposable and locking them at the margins. So even if they win that the alternative is good, it should not come at the expense of marginalized, racial, oppressed students. You shouldn't rob us of the fact that I'm a black man and that makes me different, nor will you. I will let you rob Brian of his Filipino uniqueness. Thus, the affirmative is a prerequisite to collective action that embraces and celebrates different alternative schooling through a spiritual knowledge of the classroom is critical for colonized students to create meaning for themselves, which is the motivating factor behind things like resistance in a world without focus on individuals with meaning. The resistance to capitalism will always be led by white people, will always be led by white people, whether the negative wants to admit it or not. The alternative absent identity is white people standing in front of protests, while black people people stand behind them to be fucking murdered. Now, the 1AC was already a criticism of capitalist structures in the classroom. Prime teachers are always trying to get him to be productive. Follow the rules of the worksheet and jump through the hoops that white supremacist capitalists teaches us are necessary to get a job, conform to the contribute labor market. The negative model debate status quo, standardized education. They are the teachers. They say no, you didn't follow the writing prompt correctly. You were supposed to write only about class. They are the rigid curriculum that gets kids of color kicked out of the classroom or makes them uninterested and wants them to skip, which is why criticism is the whitewash classroom makes something that white man can only participate, which is the status quo in which the classroom is already shaped towards benefiting those rich kids who already are incentivized, which are their argument that isn't that identity focus bad, is that identity focus is bad only when black and brown people do it. Now, commodification is inevitable to a great extent. We should try to for the affirmative this debate. We have provided the only resistance strategy for those who are commodity has to jump through the bullshit hoops and things like capitalism, and we resist commodification through our own nobility, and the alternative doesn't change the syllabus. Current system necessitating excess months of children in school in order to replace those niggas who are on the way to prison, which would argue there's no difference between the prison or the education we receive in the classroom, which is a direct connection, but also a figure of explanation to how we must explode the boundaries or norms we are expected to follow, and as an external advantage the alternative can't solve, because it would suggest we do nothing in the face of our own commodification. We will always be criminalized in the world. The alternative as leading bad movements to already be in the back of the police car all at the same time, being criminalized on all fronts because the police never wants to hear us and you don't want to hear us all always either, because we're always already guilty in the first place, which is why we need to be on the pursuit of happiness. Is an expression and benefits or affirmativeness is a genuine expression that is not our argument about how we are pressured to remember. We are always pressured to remember our training debate. Even when we leave spaces like these, we're still facing the same criminalization that results from traditional debate, which creates another instance of violence that recreates things like self-loathing, which is why the 1AC is the best way to prioritize accessible forms of knowledge. A couple of reasons. First, as experience, it changes the dynamics of the classroom, can create an open environment which our experiences share and develop collective strategies, while recognizing that we can use those moments to resist colonialism and the conditions that say we should give up on ourselves, but also individuals who are in special education are already on the way out of the classroom, which is how the 1AC version of the classroom is also performed, about how reclaiming our identity or centralizing that identity is key to appropriating the classrooms for ourselves through that banking model education. Now you say that now your first argument is that the ballot is a form of placebo, that this card necessarily cites things like wound and disability as to prescribe that onto ourselves, which is not only a form of victim blame, but it's also a negative prescription that our identities are always subject to, but also the crowd examination proves that that ballot didn't fucking mean anything, besides who fucking won the debate, but if the ballot validates us, why would we ever come back to spaces like these, which is only a reason for why the space and what our knowledge we inform and bring in here is more important than the shit that's here, because also it's not a fucking novel. No one wants to publish us in the first place, but it's more of a question of identity. It's also a question of identity within politics, not fucking identity politics. You need a specific, unique link, but also the one that seems not just about fucking pain. We obviously created things about survival, but also collective survival strategies for the school to prison pipeline. But that's our argument about how to be black is to already be on the way to prison, but also something that you will never fucking understand, which is why also we can reinscribe meaning to the ballot inside of spaces like these, because we can change the way in which resistance is framed in the status quo, even if it's visible. The product of the conversation inside of spaces like these is important to resist the negative black and brown stereotypes that our images are always subject to. Now, their academic co-option arc is inevitable, but because of structural violence, it's just a matter of what we do when we face co-option arc. Specific advocacy, how we're stopping the status quo. We reject the entire engine of commodification to begin with by creating new frames of meaning, which means we solve the harms of the critique, which are our war against the university ruptures social coordinates. And you can direct the negative for its curriculum alone. They come to people of color and tell us that our lessons are not good enough, that our experiences are enough to mobilize. Now, you say capitalism is the root cause. Racism has only manifested itself out of capital. Things like gratuitous violence proves this. Understand through that the ones capital never proves, but also proves that black brown individuals never fit that positionality of the worker. You say class is based on things of the heuristic or multiplicity of repression. The one he was already understanding of the experiences, how it's constituted by things like historical and social coordinates. It's capable of mapping those social relations as a form of rooted in things like colonialism. You say debate strategies, there's something that's bad about we are making a distinction between experience and knowledge. As experience is something that is informed by our identities, but rather knowledge is something that is retained and regurgitated, which is something that you don't have a contextual argument for. You say role of ballot, personal duty is the reason why the political doesn't matter. Personal already informs the political. It's also the reason why we put a cog in the trauma machine. That is the pursuit of happening arguments, but the white thing is not just about trauma. There's no impact to this argument because you don't lead this piece either, but there's no real agency because voter is stupid and the one I see creates vote. And Bowden heard me say we should be criminals inside the university.
believe that, like, we would never understand something like the experience of a black person going
Yes,
to
you
jail.
do not
right?
know what it means to be black.
Right, we do not know what it means.
Very true.
So if you're going to bring knowledge to a space where a lot of people are not going to know what that means,
It's
like,
not
what
just
is the
about
point of
me,
bringing
but it's
that
also
knowledge?
about Brian. It's about our personalized experiences and how we can
Right,
transform.
but there are people in the debate space who will never understand.
Exactly, like
Right,
you
so because of that-
resulted to remembering your training and just reading fucking.
Okay, so what's the point of bringing the knowledge then?
Because it forces us to confront that reality.
Okay, is that not something you could do outside of the debate space?
What do you mean?
You caught us. We can certainly do it outside of the debate space. Is reading Baudrillard and Moten not something you can do outside of the
It
debate
doesn't
space?
change the fact that something in here has been fucking totally violent. Like,
All right,
We've
sure,
already been in this
sure,
debate
but then I
space.
guess that brings us back to the
You should
question,
be
then
held-
what's the point of the ballot?
you should be held to the representations presented in this debate. Even if the ballot
That's
doesn't
not my
matter, your
question. What's the
rhetoric
point of the
matters.
ballot for the app?
As a
We
If
can
there are a bunch
reassign
of
meaning to
people
the
who
ballot.
will never understand, so it could just be like, I don't know, like the point of this ballot.
Like the ballot is inevitable. That's our argument.
Yeah, the ballot
Right,
goes
obviously
somewhere
within a
and
debate, the ballot is inevitable.
Right.
So why would you
So why
bring-
vote out? Because of the method.
So, because of the method, what's the method?
the method of alternative schooling.
How do we do that is our
Alternative
experience.
Right, alternative schooling that other people don't understand.
Why don't
So
we-
how do they have that knowledge too? How do
They
they
don't
have
have
that
it.
Hold on.
information?
How do you know people don't understand? How do you know Alex can't sympathize with?
I'm not saying like
my 1AZ?
specifically the judges in this room don't understand. I don't
Okay,
know
so
anything
this
about
room
what
don't
they do
matter.
not understand.
Everything outside of this room matters, but everything inside of this room don't?
That's not what I said. I'm saying I'm not going to make assumptions about the judge, but
You said-
I have questions.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay?
But you can make assumptions about me.
I'm not making assumptions about you.
You
No
call
word
watch
to that.
a
All right,
novel.
can I have another question?
No,
I didn't call you novel.
you
Now
cannot have
look.
another question.
All right. What's the point of the ballot?
Listen, the
Or
ballot.
just because that seems to just bring us back to the self-affirmation arguments we
Yes, you
have,
just
right?
made a tautological argument that nothing matters. The ballot is inevitable, which means that either you're going to win arguments about why we
All right,
did
what's
that.
the point of-
Which see,
So the ballot is just for self-affirmation.
the ballot is not a form of
The
self-affirmation.
ballot is a determinant.
Okay,
It's not saying judges vote out because the ballot.
I seem to be getting contradicting answers about whether or not bringing the knowledge into the space is about affirming yourselves or not.
Yeah, it's hard not to give contradicting answers when your whole strategy was one contradiction after the next.
Can I get an answer to my question?
We just been answering it. You just don't like our
No,
answers.
no, no. I'm saying
Okay. Ask
either.
question. Yeah.
So, are you bringing knowledge into the space?
You're
for
bringing
self-affirmation
experience
or
into
not?
the space, which is different from knowledge, which is
You're
the
bringing
argument.
what into this space?
Experience, which is different from knowledge, because that knowledge is something that is retained and regurgitated.
Okay, what's the
one in C-
distinction?
I just told you the 1 in C was regurgitated knowledge that you guys had no thought about, and the 1AC was our informed experiences in this